In 1792, the U.S. Congress passed a statute that quietly set the rules for American money and, by extension, influenced global finance for generations. On its face, the Coinage Act of 1792 looked straightforward: establish a national mint, define coin denominations, and give a young nation its own currency. But beneath that tidy surface was a sweeping decision about what money would be, how value would be measured, and who should be trusted to guard it. The Act became the United States' monetary blueprint. It anchored the dollar to metal, silver, and gold, and tied the system to law and public trust. It was the moment America decided that wealth was not just a number on paper, but something that could be weighed, tested, and verified. Over time, though, many of those bedrock ideas were watered down, reinterpreted, or abandoned. What began as a promise of honest coin gave way to a modern regime of credit expansion, inflation, and policy-driven manipulation. Picture Philadelphia in 1792. The nation was barely past its infancy. George Washington was president. Alexander Hamilton, brilliant and polarizing, ran the Treasury. Hamilton believed that political independence required monetary independence. At the time, there was no single American currency. Everyday trade ran on a jumble of Spanish dollars, British pounds, Dutch guilders, and private notes. Prices shifted from town to town. Paper had a bad reputation. Memories of the collapsed continental currency were fresh enough to spawn a phrase, "not worth a continental." Hamilton's answer was simple in form and radical in implication: create a national unit grounded in real metal. The Coinage Act set up the U.S. Mint and named the dollar as the unit of account, not as a mere label, but as a specific weight of silver. 371.25 grains of pure silver, roughly 24.06 grams. Gold coins were defined too, with a fixed legal ratio of gold to silver at 15:1. The idea was a balanced bimetallic system: gold to anchor long-term value, silver to keep daily commerce fluid for ordinary people. The law was severe about integrity. Debasing or counterfeiting the currency was made a capital crime, an extraordinary penalty that reveals how seriously the founders treated monetary honesty. To them, corrupting the currency wasn't a technical blunder. It was theft from every holder of that money. Hamilton's statute drilled down into operational details as well: a director, an assayer, a chief coiner, an engraver, each sworn to preserve purity and weight. The coins themselves carried a message. One side would proclaim liberty with a symbol of freedom. The other would bear the eagle of the Republic. Every coin was meant to remind citizens that American money flowed from law, labor, and liberty, not from monarchs or private cartels. Yet, the act also embedded a future problem. The 15:1 gold-silver ratio looked sensible in 1792, but market ratios move. In the early 1800s, the legal price undervalued one metal relative to global markets, and the good money began to vanish abroad, or into hoards, classic Gresham's law in action. A framework designed for stability produced scarcity instead. Even so, the moral force of the act was enormous. It established the American dollar as something more than paper, a defined reality with measurable content. For decades, that reputation for honest money served the country well. But as the nation expanded, the pressure to bend those principles grew. War finance, rising debts, and economic complexity lured policymakers back toward paper promises. Adjustments began to chip away at the original system. In 1834, Congress altered the gold-silver ratio to about 16:1, a small tweak with big consequences. Silver coins drained from circulation while gold dominated. The California gold discoveries added fresh supply and inflationary pressure, but the fixed ratios still distorted circulation. By the 1850s, the United States was bimetallic on paper and something else in practice. The Civil War shattered the illusion. To fund the conflict, Washington issued unbacked paper, greenbacks, breaking the metallic link. Inflation jumped, savings eroded, and the divide widened between those closest to government finance and those paid in weakening paper. After the war, the country faced a choice: return to hard money or embrace elastic paper credit. The fight was moral as much as economic. Farmers and workers favored soft money for relief. Creditors and industrialists pushed for hard money to protect purchasing power. Then came 1873. In a low-profile legislative turn, later branded the Crime of '73, Congress effectively demonetized silver. The dollar became gold-only in law, long before the public fully grasped the change. Prices fell, debts grew heavier, and populist anger erupted. The free silver movement surged, culminating in William Jennings Bryan's 1896 Cross of Gold speech, an indictment of a system seen as sacrificing ordinary people on the altar of a scarce metal. The Gold Standard Act of 1900 sealed the transition. Control migrated upward. In 1913, the Federal Reserve was created, formalizing a centralized authority over credit and the money supply. The Great Depression put that authority to a brutal test. With banks failing and deflation raging, gold, once the symbol of trust, became a choke point as people hoarded it. In 1933, President Franklin D. Roosevelt ordered private gold surrendered and raised the official price from $20.67 to $35 per ounce, devaluing the dollar and transferring purchasing power to the state through revaluation. Whatever its crisis logic, the precedent was unmistakable. Money could be redefined by decree. After World War II, the Bretton Woods system crowned the dollar as the world's anchor, nominally redeemable in gold for foreign governments. Yet Washington spent beyond its metal, and foreign claims on U.S. gold piled up. By the late 1960s, the gold drain was undeniable. The French famously sent a warship to collect their bullion. In 1971, President Richard Nixon temporarily closed the gold window. The temporary fix became permanent. The dollar turned into pure fiat. From that moment forward, money was policy. The Federal Reserve could create it in vast quantities. Governments could run deficits untethered to metal constraint. Banks could pyramid credit atop thin reserves. The Coinage Act's premise, that a dollar is a defined weight and purity, was flipped. Now, a dollar was whatever policy said it was. The system still wore old symbols. The mint still stamped coins. Liberty still appeared on our change. But the metal inside a dime or quarter bore only symbolic worth. Inflation, once treated as a moral wrong, became a managed target. If you priced a $17.92 as 224 grams of silver today, its value would translate to many modern paper dollars, a stark reminder of how purchasing power has stretched thin over centuries. The deeper lesson runs beyond nostalgia for gold and silver. The founders understood that money is, at root, a covenant of trust. Break that trust, and you corrode the social contract. Sound money restrains power. Politicians can't spend what they can't print. Banks can't lend what they don't have. Savers can plan their lives with confidence. The 20th century traded restraint for flexibility, and flexibility tends to favor those closest to the spigot of new money. Economists call the pattern the Cantillon effect. Early recipients benefit before prices adjust. Late recipients pay the inflation tax. Today, most money exists as entries in databases. That makes payments faster and control easier. Accounts can be frozen, flows monitored, and balances expanded or erased with keystrokes. Central bank digital currencies promise efficiency, but raise a chilling possibility. Money that doesn't just represent value, but permission. In such a world, spending can be steered, throttled, or timed. Property becomes conditional. This is why the neglected wisdom of 1792 still matters. The form of money shapes the form of society. When individuals hold money that can't be cheaply diluted, power is forced to play by rules. When money is infinitely malleable, rules bend toward power. Around the world, central banks are quietly adding gold. Countries are diversifying reserves. Cryptocurrencies, volatile as they are, reflect a grassroots hunger for monetary independence. Ordinary people, squeezed by rising prices, are asking first-principle questions again. What gives money value? Who benefits when new money is created? How long will my savings mean what they once meant? Monetary systems rarely fail because arithmetic stops working. They fail when the public stops believing the game is fair. Rome clipped its silver. Revolutionary France drowned itself in assignats. Weimar Germany let the presses roar. Each thought it could finesse consequences with clever policy. Each was undone when trust evaporated. So what now? The next chapter is being drafted in real time, in the balance sheets of central banks, the code of digital currencies, and the private choices of millions who save, spend, hedge, or opt out. The Coinage Act of 1792 remains a signpost, not because we can rewind history, but because it clarifies the stakes. Money should be real in the sense that it is predictable, measurable, and difficult to corrupt. If it ceases to be that, it becomes a weapon, subtle, quiet, and devastating. The founders probably never imagined high-frequency trading or algorithmic markets, but they knew what happens when money serves politics instead of people. The decline can masquerade as progress, stretching over years, even decades. The end looks the same. Wealth concentrates, trust thins, and value leaks away. The greatest risk to modern money isn't technology or spreadsheets. It's forgetting what those early lawmakers insisted on, that liberty needs honest weights and measures, and that trust, once squandered, is painfully hard to buy back.